الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamualaikum. So Faraz Khan is here. We're going to start the session for anyone that wants to stay behind here. I know it's very late already, but I know some people came specifically for that also. So Faraz is here, and we're going to start the class. It's going to be themes of the Quran, and it'll be about 20 to 30 minutes. And we're going to stream live also online, inshallah.
5 minutes is over.
20, 30 maybe.
He does not want to give you more than 5 minutes. Ramadan Mubarak. How's your son?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you need to stretch, that's great. If you don't, that's awesome. We'll start within a minute, inshallah. Just to give you an overview, we're going to be talking about the Quran, inshallah, since this is the month of Quran. So that will be our theme. And what we'll try to do is we'll try to explain some of the major themes in the Quran, so we have an understanding, especially what happens in Taraweeh prayer, so we get an understanding, inshallah. So 1 minute, inshallah, and then we'll start. Is this better? Okay. If the sisters want to move up forward, closer to the pillar areas, that's fine too, inshallah. They should move up? Yes. So the brothers are saying you should move up, inshallah. So, the president is saying you should move up. How about that? So we'll start in a minute, inshallah. I'll keep my mic close to me so you can hear better. So inshallah, we'll be starting on the 7 themes of the Quran. I would say 7 incredible themes of the Quran. Because all of the Quran is incredible, obviously. But this is a way of explaining what is explained or what is talked about. What are some of the topics? Themes are basically the topics that our Quran discusses. So inshallah, we'll talk about them. You guys are ready? I'm not. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah, sallallahu ala salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Just to explain, I will 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't want to bore you. If you need to stretch, that's fine. You know, you have done long Tarawih prayer. If you need to stand up, you know, walk around, that's okay. You know, if you like to maybe fall asleep or something like that. And pins and needles, right? So that's just, you know, taking care of what we need to take care of. Now, the Quran is an incredible book. But what we have to understand when the Quran is being recited, it's not only it is a book, but it is also a speech of God, right? Kalamullah and Kitabullah, both at the same time. And many people, when they don't make that distinction, they think of a Quran as only a book, then they fall into this trap of saying, well, how come this book is so different from all the other books? There's no introduction, the chapters are not chronological order. There is no story from start to the end. It all seems like whenever you open up the Quran, it's talking about something and it switches from one topic to another topic, right? Isn't that the case that we find? So for example, in the last few chapters, Surah Al-Qiyamah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's talking about Al-Qiyamah, what will happen. The sun and the moon, that, you know, these celestial bodies will be combined and this will be the horror on the Day of Judgment. And all of a sudden, Allah is speaking to the Prophet in the middle of it, right? He's speaking to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and saying to him, don't recite or don't move your tongue so fast, trying to remember the ayat. Right? So you say, well, what is going on here, right? I mean, obviously. Another example of this is when you read Surah An-Nisa. At the end, so you recite and then you're reading Surah An-Nisa and it's talking about you know, being watchful, being mindful about God, and then the last ayah where you would think is going to conclude the chapter, it actually says God talks about or gives you a fatwa on kilala, on an orphan, right? When so God talks about the bequest or how their inheritance should be distributed, and then you're like, wait a minute. He was talking about the Day of Judgment. He was talking about, you know, worshiping God and Tawheed and all the signs that are out there, and all of a sudden you have inheritance thing in there. The reason why, because we have to remember, again, it's not just a book, it's a speech. So it's a speech that is given, and sometimes when a speaker is there and you walk in and the speaker may say, brother, move forward. Right? Move up forward. Why? Because the reality, what's in front of you, you're speaking to these individuals. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's speaking to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly. So remember this, it's not just a book, but it's also a speech of God. And that would be reflected when we recite some of the verses. That is the reason why, and there are many other reasons why, obviously, but this is in a nutshell how we understand the book. So, what are the 7 themes of the Quran? We'll talk about those 7, and I'll mention those 7. And I want you to understand that that's just a way of understanding knowledge or having an understanding of, like, for example, you know, to talk about 5 pillars of Islam, right? The Prophet told us and mentioned to us, and we know those 5 pillars. But do you know that that is a way of explaining Islam to people without really putting them under pressure, or without having them to think hard and fast about it? Just the easy, what is Islam? The Prophet explained to us, Shahada, Salah, Siyam, Zakat, Hajj. I mean, is that everything in Islam? What about dietary laws? What about marriage contract? What about inheritance? Isn't that Islam too? But the Prophet is giving you a way of looking at what are the basics, what are the tenets, what consists of. If you know and you work on these, you basically have it, right? Not that you drop all these things, right? Not that you don't respect your parents or anything like that. But if you have those 5 pillars, you're onto something good, and you have a general good understanding of Islam. So these are called 5 pillars of Islam. So similarly, the 7 themes of the Quran that I'm introducing, not that it's something that the Prophet gave us and he said, these are the 7 themes, or Allah said, these are the 7 major topics or themes. But rather, it's an understanding of the book of Allah, reading the book over and over, and then you recognize that there are certain topics that are repeated. Okay? And so this is the way we capture these ayat, so we have a better understanding of the Book of Allah. So starting with the first one first. What do you think is the major theme, major topic that Quran discusses? Almost every line that you pick up the book, and that theme is there. Tawheed, mashallah. I think I have something. Mashallah, the sister got it. I was working on these, so you reminded me, mashallah. These are the good snacks that will not have too much sugar in your system, inshallah. So what I'll do is I'll send it back to the sister. Okay, how do I do that? Can I have brother go back and give it to the sister? Tawheed, that's great. And what is Tawheed? Let me ask you this. Most people, if you ask them what is Tawheed, they say it's the exact opposite of shirk, right? And that is true. But you ask, why is Allah promising? We heard the ayah recited tonight, that whoever does shirk, God will never forgive that. Other than that, He will forgive everything, all the sins, right? He will not forgive shirk. Why is that Allah is getting so mad, so angry? I mean, don't you think murder is really bad? Don't you think like stealing is really low? Like right? Don't you think all these other haram, right? Zina is really going out there, raping somebody, astaghfirullah, right? Those are really awful, awful deeds. But why shirk? You're not really harming anybody out there. People, right?
Associating partners, God does not want that.
God does not want, but why doesn't He want that?
Because He's unique, He's one. One is the Tawheed.
Yes. Understood. But what is the reason why He doesn't want that? A little deeper into. You're absolutely on it. That's the definition of Tawheed.
People can make the world more profitable.
No two people could?
Make the world go properly around. Only one person can manage the rest.
That's one of the reasons why how the system works. So that's a proof of Tawheed, right? So no two gods, if there were two gods, just like the ayah that Quran mentioned, that it would have been just inconsistent. But why does He, that's a proof, why does He get angry? We're on the right thing, we're getting hot. Yes.
God created us to praise only Him.
That's Tawheed, that's a definition, but why?
You deny Tawheed.
When you deny Tawheed, that's shirk. Alright, so I'll try to help out here a little bit, right? That's how I understand. And that's why it's important that we understand and our children also understand. Shirk is basically a lie on God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually says in the Quran, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your proof if you're honest or if you're truthful. If you have something, bring it out. Because God says He sent out all the messengers and prophets, and He sent down the books, right? All the books, Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, Torah, Zabur, Injil, Quran, and all the other suhuf that we know. Suhuf Ibrahim or Musa, right? One of the ayahs from Surah Al-A'la. But in it, He never revealed anything. And they lie upon God that God has a partner. And that's why God gets angry. That's one of the reasons why, right? So you see how shirk is a lie, a direct lie on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Tawheed is discussed throughout in the Quran. And there are many other reasons as well, right? But we should understand why Tawheed. And what we have to understand is when we are in the Taraweeh prayer, right? Now talking from the perspective of people who are attending the prayers. And I want you to, even if you don't understand much of the Quran, right? Where we could draw clues from the Quran. It's very simple. Quran actually, in order to understand the book, it's very simple. To have an expertise in the words and translations and grammar, that's obviously a different story. But the verses are repeated over and over. Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran actually, and Surah the other surahs, they're very simple in tone. If you understand basic Arabic, you understand these ayat. And all you have to do really, and if you even don't understand, read a few times translations and you'll gain a better understanding of it. So what happens is that when Tawheed is talked about, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned He is Ghafoor ar-Rahim, the entire ayah that is preceding that is actually a proof. What it had talked about is the mercy and forgiveness of God. You see? Like even if you don't understand, you simply understand the word Ghafur, right? He is Ar-Rahman, right? And then you see if it's the first ayah, Ar-Rahman, the most beneficent, Allama al-Quran, Khalaq al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. All these ayat and the ones that are going to follow, because Ar-Rahman is the first word or name of Allah, they're actually explaining who is Ar-Rahman and giving examples of who is Ar-Rahman, how His mercy is prevailed. So you have a slight understanding. So if the ayah talks about that, the word is mentioned, then this is actually going to be. So remember those 99 names of Allah, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, Dhul Jalal, right? Majesty, right? That He talks about. Then we have to pay attention because He may be talking about people that He's angry with sometimes. Right? Adl. When the word Adl is mentioned, He's very clear and careful about explaining things, rules to people. And He's basically stating to us that that don't transgress the boundaries or the limits that He has set. So it's important that we recognize that. So 99 names of Allah, or the names of Allah that are mentioned, Tawheed, again, we're in the first theme of the Quran. If you pay attention to that, you have a good idea about what the verse is talking about and what the Qari Sahab or the Muqri is reciting the Quran and what the meaning of it, right? So now I'm going to give you an example. These are the two verses, okay? One of them will mention the names of Allah. I just simply open up the Quran because I want to relay it and I want you to pay attention to what I'm talking about. So if you hear certain words, pay attention to what could be the theme of the Quran. And this definitely relates to the first theme. أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ فَتَعَالَى اللَّهُ الْمَلِكُ الْحَقُّ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْكَرِيمِ. Any words that you pick up about Allah? Rabbul Arshil Kareem, right? That He is the, what's the meaning of Lord, right? Of the Arsh. Arsh is throne, right? And then He talks about, there's another word that is mentioned. Malikul Haq. What's Al-Malik? The meaning? Al-Malik is the king. And Al-Haq, that He is the true king, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned about it. So, and what happens, and what about the first ayah? It actually is a question. أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا, do you think that you were simply created without any reason, and that you will not be returned back to Allah? You will not return back to us. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَعَالَى اللَّهُ, that God is above, right? And He is the king, the true king, you know, because He is the one who has control over everything in this life and in the hereafter, and you shall return to Allah. So it's showing the power of God. It's showing who is the person, or who is the one who is in charge, not person, obviously, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining that in these ayat. And if you understand those names of Allah, you have a basic idea that it's actually talking about, and especially the word La ilaha illa hu, that when that it's talked about, then He's negating something of the shirk. The major problem with shirk, we talked about the first one, right? The second thing is about shirk is that not only it's a lie upon Allah, what happens is when people commit shirk, they put somebody else in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. And what they're trying to do is that they're trying to find a shortcut. That's very important. What people are trying to do is that they cheat in their life, they lie, they abuse their families, right? They are telling lies to people, their neighbors, they're abusive, whatever it is. And then they would tell, right? They would say, you know what? That idol's going to save me. Shirk, right? Or they need money, right? And they, instead of going to Allah, they go to this idol, because whether it's halal or haram, they don't care. Because they're not worshipping the idol of money, they're actually worshiping money itself, meaning their own desires become their Lord. And the problem with that, obviously, is that when you try to make a shortcut and take the wrong way, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets angry over people, right? Because we're supposed to follow, because following Allah, meaning His commands, basically means that you follow that which is the truth, that which is upright. Bir wa taqwa. These are the two things that a believer is in the state of. That he would want righteousness, he's acting upon righteousness, or he's doing taqwa, which is basically fending off sins and things that are haram. Okay, so these are the first part of the 7 themes, and it may seem like the 6 more are going to be by the Fajr time, right? But I think first one is really important. So I wanted to kind of elaborate on that. The next 6. I'll give it to you and then we'll walk out of here. How about that? So the next one is, what do you think the next one will be?
So,
We'll come to you. Sabr, which is a characteristic that Allah wants us to develop.
Akhirah.
Akhirah, which is good. I want to talk about that.
shukr.
Shukr, it's also another character. Yes, sister in the back.
It's risala.
It's Risala. MashaAllah. I'm going to ask you, brother, again. If you could just deliver. Jazakallah khair. Oh, man. So I tried to give you guys a chance. You know, I asked and I asked and I asked. But, Jazakallah khair. And so, the second one is Risala, or the message, or the messengers and prophets who came. Okay? And in a nutshell, the Quran has all these stories. Remember, who's the prophet that is mentioned the most by the name?
Moses.
Musa alayhi salam. There you go. Sorry. See, I wanted to give you some. Jazakallah khair. So Musa alayhi salam is talked about the most, and Musa alayhi salam, his stories, right? All the stories of Musa alayhi salam comes under the message of Risala. Who are other prophets that are talked about? Ibrahim alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, right? Dawood alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam, right? All these stories are there. And that's what the story of Adam alayhi salam, these are the stories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, and that's the message part. And it's the important part, because when the prophet comes to the people, it's not just obey God. It's obey God and follow the messenger, right? And that's why most people don't understand that. They say, oh, I follow God, or I love God, right? Or I believe in God. No. There's another part to your life, and that is you have to commit to God. And how are you going to commit to God? By following the messenger. Okay, and that's why whenever we say La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, right? And that's what it completes the statement. So that's the second one. The third one, inshallah, is as the brother mentioned. Your name again? I'm sorry. Imran Sahab. You know, I forget. I've seen you so many times at the masjid. So the third one is al-akhirah, as brother Imran had mentioned, and that is akhirah. When it talks about the scene, the drop scene, if you want to read about it, Surah Al-Zumar, the last, I think 2 ruku or 15 ayat or so, and it's scary. If you want to understand how the scene is going to be, the scariest ayah, probably, this is my understanding of it, right, is the ayah that is recited in Surah Qaf. Do you know which one it is? Closer, and then it builds up. It's the next few ayah after that. After. يوم يقول لجهنم هل امتلأت وتقول هل من مزيد. I mean, from our perspective, Jahannam, see, that's the Quran is so powerful. And if you understand Arabic a little bit, right, you have an idea, it's just like, you can't go to sleep. Right? Umar radiallahu, there are known stories that somebody was reciting the Quran and he hears an ayah, he falls off his camel and he's literally sick for 3 days. They said, why? He said, the so-and-so recited this ayah and it reminded me of al-akhirah. I mean, they literally took these ayahs in front of them, all these things. So the ayah, the meaning of it, that that on the day Jahannam would be asked, are you, this is a question from Allah, Halim Tala, are you satisfied, are you full? And it would say, are there any more? Are there any more of human beings, of people of Jahannam, dwellers of Jahannam? And so, you know, this is why it's important that when the message comes, we have to pay attention to the message itself. When the Prophet, he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when you recite Alif Lam Mim, the 10 letters Alif, the 10 rewards for Alif, the reciting letter Alif, the Lam 10 rewards, and Mim 10 more rewards. You have to remember, he's talking to a community that understands Arabic. He's not talking about you go and recite everything and not understand anything. I understand that is not a language of some people. But the basic message was, understand this book. You are required to understand the message. You're required to understand the message. It's not about how much you recite. It's not about how many Qur'ans you complete. It's about, do you understand the message and do you implement it in your life? That's where you begin, right? And then just reading part, it's good. I mean, that's a start. For some people, that's where they are. But, you know, it's like kindergarten. You know how kids start saying A, B, C, D. Imagine if they stayed on these letters. Imagine if they learned the words but never understood the meaning of these words. A lot of us are like that. And I think that's where we have to make that jump. We have to make that promise to ourselves that we are going to have a better connection with Allah. And the only way to do it, not the only way obviously, but one of the ways to do it is to understand the message that the messengers brought. And the Day of Judgment, all of the accounts that are mentioned, that's the third theme that we talked about, they are there for us to see it. And what is incredible about the messengers, this is the last point about the third one, or the second theme. What's so incredible about the messengers is, I want you to think about all the intelligent human beings that you could think of. Einstein, Newton, Galileo, you know, from Muslim world, you could pick up names of scientists, philosophers, poets, Iqbal, right? Ahmed Shawqi, right? All these people, if you could put all of them in one place, and then put messengers and prophets, what's so different about them? How are they smarter than other people? It's not about that. What these prophets and messengers have is that they could give you what will happen after you die. And all of the efforts and benefit that all these people like Einstein and others could provide us, it's only for this life. And that is the reason why it is incredible that we have to understand that messengers and their guidance is a huge part of, and we're thankful and grateful for that part where they've communicated that message to us. Because nobody else knows what will happen after that. Because there's nothing that communicates when you die what will happen, except either in the books, meaning the Quran, or the noble kutub that were books that were revealed, scriptures that were revealed, or the prophets and messengers that when they came and spoke with their people. So that is the third theme. And these three themes, Tawheed, Risala, messengership, or the prophethood, or the message, and then the Akhirah, these are the primary themes of the Quran. And then after that, there are four other themes, and those are the themes that you find that the first three themes are basically the themes that the Meccan Quran, the first 13 years, is full of it. And then the last four themes are revealed in period in Medina. Well, actually, most of the last four themes, not all of them. So what are some of the last four themes? The number 4 is Sharia, commands and prohibitions. So when it talks about the marriage, if you're going to divorce, how are you going to divorce? Taking care of the babies, right? About 4 pages in Surah Al-Baqarah are dedicated to how you, if the husband dies, or if there's a widow, or if there's kids afterwards, or if there's a divorce in the family, or if the things are not working out, how do you take care of it? You know, 4 pages just talking about that. And do you know why it talks about that? Why it talks about orphans and all this? Surah An-Nisa, inheritance law. Why is Allah talking about inheritance? Because at that time, so many of people had died in battle of Uhud. And so many of the widows were there. How are we going to take care of the community? The Prophet, right, receives revelation. And that's how he's guided. And that's how the community is guided. These are not haphazard rules that are explained, but rather they all have a meaning and they all have a context. So commands and prohibitions, which is Sharia. Number 5, intellectual arguments and stories, right? One of them that I could give you, the arguments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, look at the sky, look at the moons, look at the trees, look at all this. Who created? If you ask them who is the creator and who sends down the rain and who makes the wind go and all these, right? And who grows the trees and the crops and things like that, they would say Allah. Then how are you, deluded? This is what Allah says. Then how in the world are you deluded by making shirk with Allah? So these are the arguments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about to open up the minds. One of them is very powerful. I believe in Surah Al-Hajj. Towards the end, it talks about Dubaba, which is which simply means a fly, right? And it talks about a fly. These idols that you worship, I'll give you the English, that you worship, they're so helpless that they can't even create a fly. They're so helpless. And if a fly snatches something away from them, right? There's like mithai in front of them, like some sweets, or they used to put like ornaments, right? Silk, brocade, all these things in front of the idols. If a fly snatches something of the food that they have in front of them, they can't even move the fly. How about that? And it says the alfa talibu al-matlub, the one who is seeking the help, meaning the person who is making the shirk, and the idol itself, they can't help one another. They are both weak, actually. That's the meaning. So that's just one ayah. The Quran throws it at the mushrikeen, and mushrikeen, they can't come up with an answer. You see, so the Quran is full of logical arguments. It's not a book that says, do this, do this, do this, do that. But if you follow, there's a logic behind everything. And that the logic is, the reasoning is, that you will follow the guidance. You will be on guidance. Number 6, self-purification, tazkiyah. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ, right? Zakkaha, the one who, the one who has achieved success, is the one who purifies himself or herself. And the one who fails or slips, just simply goes down, is the one who follows his or her desires, right? So that's what happens. So success and failure is given. And tazkiyah is a big part of it. If you look at all of the Sharia and all of the Quran too, all the commands and prohibitions, you could put the word in tazkiyah as simply purification, okay? So purity. How do you do wudu? The purification, the cleaning of your clothes, the garment, the place you stand must be pure. The food that you eat must be halal wa tayyib, right? It has to be pure. The meat that you eat, the reason why blood is haram, the reason why pigs are haram, the reason why dead animals are haram, and dead people too. Because all of it is beastly. You don't want to be a beast, you want to be a human being. So that's why eat halal and tayyib. All of Sharia, if you look at it, right, you become a person who is a pure person, a well-intended person, a person who is conscious of God, a person who's conscious of his role in the society. So this becomes a good, pure person. And if he consumes good things, his heart will be pure, right? Because that's why if you look at things that are haram to look at, right, then it is something impure. Right? That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, guard your sight, guard your chastity, because this is something impure. So all of the Sharia is about purity, and that is the reason why self-purification, if you look into it, Surah Al-Hujurat, if you read it, what you should not do and what you should do in terms of not to backbite, not to slander, not to call names to other people. It's a lot of times it's easier to, for parents to even call their kids names, right? Bad names, which is, right? It's haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't do that. Backbite, when you say, we went to this party and, the salan was good, but the biryani was really bad. This guy doesn't know, or this woman doesn't know how to cook. That's backbiting. No, seriously. Umar radiallahu anhu, he was with somebody and he said, his servant is good guy, but he sleeps too much. And whenever you kind of degrade a person, the Prophet ﷺ, he was angry with him. He says, what do you mean? He's not in our presence, and you're degrading the person. And that's ghiba. That's ghiba, right? You just like eating the flesh of your dead brother. Because this is foul. It goes against purification of the heart. So self-purification is a big part of the Quran and our understanding of Sharia. And then the last one, inshallah, and you will find that in both Makki period and Madani period, and the self-purification goes in both periods too, inshallah, is that the last one is, what do you think the last one is? It's not the last one, but I'm talking about this. The theme is the last. What do you think is the last theme? Any wild guesses? We talk about Tawheed, Shirk, Risala. Reward. That's a good one. I like that. The reward would be mentioned in the hereafter. Maybe Al-Akhirah connects to it. There's no right or wrong, but I think that's a good idea. I have one written down, so I see. Let's see if you could. Paradise would be Al-Akhirah, right? Jahannam, Jannah. That's related to Al-Akhirah. Which one? Death. Death is talked about a lot, but I think it relates to the transition from this dunya to Al-Akhirah. Right? What would be and all of them are valid answers, by the way. The one that I have written down is that the Quran, one of the major themes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He focuses on is dua, is supplication to Lord. And the one that I want to mention, inshallah, as I will conclude here, and I think this is like the king of all the du'as, right? I mean, there's one that is that the Prophet ﷺ talks about, but in the Quran, all of the du'a, this one I think everybody memorizes, right? What is that du'a? MashaAllah. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. I gave you hasana in this dunya, so inshallah you'll have the hasana in the akhirah. So that's the dua. That's very powerful. And then, what surah is this in? Say it out loud and you get it. Surah Al-Baqarah. I heard it from you. Who else said it? Nabi? Which one? I'll wait for you. Oh, watch it. I'm trying to be a quarterback here. But last one is dua. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. Let me explain it to you. It's in Surah Al-Baqarah. I want you to go back and read that ayah. Read that dua. Just go back in the Quran. If somebody could look up that ayah, I think it's 100 something. And it's so powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't say this is a dua that you should memorize. You know how He puts that dua in context? He says, from amongst humanity, there are people who say, and the verse starts, Rabbana atina fid dunya. From amongst people, there are those who say, O Lord, give us from the life of this world. And then God says, they shall have nothing in the hereafter. Right? They shall have nothing in the hereafter. Listen to this. God doesn't say that they shall have nothing in this life, but He says they shall have nothing in the hereafter. What they're asking for? In one word, what are they asking for? Dunya, right? Give us from the life of this. Give us from the dunya. And then He says, so this is one group of people. And these are people who deny God. These are people who are not interested in God. These are people who are interested in how big is their car? How luxurious is their house? Do they have a swimming pool? Their life is just all about materialistic identity of bragging who they are and what they want to be. Basically a Pharaoh's lifestyle. Right? They may not have Pharaoh's army, but that's the lifestyle. That's where the heart is. It's connected to, the new computer, the chandelier, whatever it is, the materialistic. And none of these things that I've mentioned are like there's any haram part. But the thing is, the mindset is fixed on these things. And that's what they want. They want this life. They love this life. And God says, as for another group of people, they say, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. Don't just give us from this life of this world, but give us from the best. Give us from the most beautiful things of this life of this world. وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنًا, and give us from the best and the most beautiful of the things in the hereafter. Right? وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And their focus, right, is that they want to be protected, and they're seeking God, and they're seeking and asking from God that protect us from hellfire. And that's the message, and that's a very strong message. When you ask for something like this, you actually align. We all align ourselves to asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm interested in getting the good in this life, obviously, because I'm a human being, I have needs and desires, and He had put all these desires in us, not so we suppress these desires, right? Whether it's food or luxury or beauty, right? Or marriage, right? Not to suppress these, but to make it in a pure and halal and tayyib way, right? Which we talked about. And then He says, He will give you and give us that which is pure, inshallah, and good in the hereafter too. And then we recognize that Allah is the source. When you recognize that Allah is the source, that's tawheed. That's tawheed. And when you recognize that that position, that paycheck is the source of all good, then that's shirk. Okay? That just becomes shirk, because Allah is missing from the picture. And so this is what we have to remember. This is the last of the themes, the dua. Just to recap, the 7 themes that we talked about, faith and tawheed, faith and monotheism. The second one we've mentioned is risala, or the message that the messengers brought. The third one is accountability and the hereafter, al-akhirah. The fourth one is sharia, or commands and prohibitions. The fifth one is the intellectual arguments. We mentioned about the fly that snatches away things from these idols. The sixth one is tazkiyah, self-purification, humility, patience, all these good things. And then the seventh one that I mentioned is dua, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the goods all the good in this life and in the hereafter, and protecting us from hellfire. Yes, the sister. Yes.
There's a very nice book which you can give as dawah, as well as it gives you the complete logic behind every sign of Allah. And that is by Harun Yahya, and it is called Allah is Known Through Reason.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. So there's a book that you could read to, inshallah, further gain.
Dawah, as well as for making people understand the signs of Allah through reason.
Jazakallah. So that's another way, inshallah, to gain that knowledge. So these are the 7 themes that we talked about, including the book that the sister mentioned, Jazakallah khair. And let us pray, inshallah, make dua. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا عَلَيْكَ تَوَكَّلْنَا وَإِلَيْكَ أَنَبْنَا وَإِلَيْكَ الْمَصِيرُ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ وَارْحَمْ وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الرَّاحِمِينَ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا إِن لَّمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لنكونن من الخاسرين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Thank you so much for listening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and continue to do the worship of Allah. We'll meet again next Saturday if you're interested, inshallah. And the session is recorded and it's on ISCJ-TV if you research YouTube, inshallah. So Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. For the topic for next week, it's actually on the monitor too, but I believe it's, I don't remember. But it's related to the Quran, inshallah. Okay, assalamu alaikum.